You didn't imagine it. That moment when she looked past you, the pause before she answered your message, the subtle distance that made you wonder if you were already written off. Most men tell themselves a story right there. She's not interested. I don't have a chance. I should pull back before I embarrass myself. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one says out loud. What you're reading as rejection often isn't rejection at all. It's unfinished perception. Music, and men who understand this move differently. This channel doesn't exist to hype you up. It exists to clarify something most men feel but can't explain. Because attraction isn't music loud, it doesn't announce itself, and it rarely starts where you think it does. If you've ever felt invisible to a woman you quietly wanted, this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about removing what's blocking who you already are. And that starts with something so subtle most men overlook it entirely. Before we get there, let me say this clearly. You're not weak. You weren't rejected. You were operating without the full picture. Men who react chase, men who notice adjust, and adjustment is power. Music. Section 1. The eye contact that changes everything. Most men think eye contact is about confidence. Hold the gaze, don't blink, assert yourself. That's surface level thinking. Men who understand psychology know eye contact isn't about dominance. It's about emotional permission. Here's what changes everything. Music. When a woman looks at you, she's not deciding if you're attractive. She's deciding if she feels safe enough to feel anything at all. That decision happens before logic, before words, before intention. And it's often made in silence. There's something most men don't know or notice. When you speak with her, her left eye connects more directly to emotional processing. It's not mystical, it's neurological. This is where emotional bonding begins. Not because you stared, but because you slowed down. Men who rush eye contact communicate hunger. Men who soften it communicate control. And control, real control, never needs to prove itself. The shift is subtle. You don't lock in, you don't lean forward, you don't demand attention. You breathe, you stay still. You let your presence settle before your words do. Music. And when you meet her gaze gently, intentionally, you're not saying, "Look at me." You're saying, "I see you. I'm not here to take. I'm grounded enough to stay." That's why this works. Because eyes don't lie, and women are trained by experience to listen to what isn't said. Men who stay calm under attention feel rare. Men who don't rush feel unfamiliar. Men who don't need a reaction create curiosity. This is where perception begins to shift. She may not smile, she may not lean in, she may not react at all. And that's the point, because attraction doesn't announce itself when it's forming. It goes quiet. Here's where most men fail. They interpret neutrality as indifference. So they music talk more, explain more, push energy forward. And the moment they do, the spell breaks. Men who understand this don't chase reassurance. They let silence work. Because silence, when paired with emotional steadiness, creates space, and space is where desire breathes. But eye contact alone isn't music enough. Something else anchors memory even deeper, often without her realizing why she feels different around you. It's not what you say, it's what stays after you leave. And that's where scent enters the equation, not as decoration, as identity. But before we go there, ask yourself this. When you're with her, are you trying to be chosen or are you allowing yourself to be felt? That distinction will matter more than you think. And in the next part, you'll understand why some men linger in a woman's mind long after the conversation ends, even music when nothing happened. There's a reason some men are remembered and others are mentally erased the moment they leave the room. It's not looks. It's not money. It's not even confidence in the way most people define it. Music. It's association. Men who understand psychology don't try to impress in the moment. They plant something that lingers. And the most underestimated trigger for that isn't conversation, it's scent. Section music 2. The scent that stays when you're gone. Most men treat fragrance like decoration, something loud, something obvious, something meant to announce, I'm here. That's already the mistake. Music. Because attraction doesn't form when she notices you. It forms when she remembers you without trying to. Scent bypasses logic entirely. It goes straight to emotional memory, the part of the brain that decides comfort, safety, music, familiarity. That's why certain smells instantly pull you back into moments you didn't plan to revisit. A hallway, a hug, a feeling you didn't name at the time. Men who understand this don't wear fragrance to seduce. They wear it to anchor. Subtle, clean, unforced, an extension of who they already are. Here's what matters, not whether she compliments it, but whether her body registers it as familiar. Because once your presence is associated with calm or grounding or intrigue, your absence creates contrast, and contrast creates curiosity. That's the part most men miss. They want attraction to happen in front of them. But the real shift often happens later in a grocery store aisle, on an elevator, passing someone who smells almost like you. That moment when she pauses just slightly and doesn't know why. Men who leave that kind of imprint don't chase attention. They let memory do the work. But scent alone doesn't hold if your nervous system is loud. Which brings us to the thing women notice before they ever name it: your internal state. Section 3. Why anxiety repels without a word. Here's something uncomfortable but freeing. Women don't reject men for being nervous. They pull back from men who aren't settled inside themselves. There's a difference. Nervous energy feels unstable. Grounded energy feels safe. And safety is the gateway emotion. This is where many men turn this conversation toxic, telling themselves they need to dominate, suppress, or overpower anxiety. That only makes it louder. Men who understand emotional control don't fight anxiety. They regulate it. They calm the nervous system first because behavior always follows state. This isn't about hacks, it's about chemistry. When your system is constantly alert, overthinking tone, timing, reactions, she feels that tension before you say a word. But when your body is calm, your presence changes, your voice slows, your movements soften, your attention sharpens, and suddenly you're not trying to be interesting. Music. You are interesting because you're not fragmented. Simple tools help here, not to change who you are, but to remove noise. L-theanine quiets mental static without dulling awareness. Ashwagandha lowers stress reactivity so pressure doesn't hijack you. Magnesium restores baseline calm so confidence doesn't feel forced. Men who use these aren't cheating the system. They're restoring equilibrium because attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to coherence. When your mind, body, and presence align, she doesn't feel pursued. She feels invited. But there's a moment right before interaction where this shift can be locked in completely and almost no one talks about it. Section 4. Borrowed music safety becomes personal power before a date. Before a meeting, before stepping into her space, call someone who knows you, not to hype you up, not to rehearse lines, just to hear a voice that recognizes you without expectation. Here's why this works. Your nervous system calibrates through familiarity. Safety is contagious. When you speak to someone who accepts you without performance, your body remembers something important. I'm already enough. And that internal reminder changes your baseline. You're no longer entering the interaction to gain value. You're entering from stability. Music. Women sense this instantly. Not consciously, not verbally, but emotionally. You're not trying to impress. You're not scanning for approval. You're present. Men who carry that energy don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't fill silence with noise. Music and silence, when held calmly, creates gravity. This is where her perception begins to shift. Not because you did something impressive, but because you didn't need to. Music. And in the next part, we'll dismantle one of the biggest lies men believe about dates and why predictable settings quietly kill attraction before it ever has a chance to grow. Because once you understand how emotion is created, you stop performing and start being remembered. Most men think dates fail because they said the wrong thing. They replay sentences, tone, timing, music. That's not where attraction collapses. It collapses because nothing moved inside her. No emotional shift, no internal contrast, no reason for her nervous system to reclassify you. Here's the part that stings a little. Predictable settings feel safe, but they also feel forgettable. And attraction doesn't grow in comfort alone, it grows in contrast. Section 5. Why safe dates keep you invisible. Dinner, coffee, movies. They're not wrong, they're just neutral. They place you across from her, not with her. Music. They keep emotion flat. They keep perception locked where it started. Men who don't understand this try harder inside these settings. They talk more. They perform more. They lean forward emotionally. And the more they do, the more she stays exactly where she was because nothing challenged her internal story about you. Men who understand psychology don't ask, did she like the date? Music. They ask, did her emotional state change while she was with me? That's the real question. Emotion is the language attraction speaks. Not logic, not resumes, not effort. So instead of sitting face to face waiting for chemistry to magically appear, men who shift perception introduce experiences that create emotional spikes. Not chaos, not recklessness, just movement. Music, a change in scenery, a shared task, a moment where adrenaline, curiosity, or laughter interrupts neutrality. Why does this work? Because the brain doesn't tag memory by conversation, it tags it by feeling. This is called misattribution of arousal. When her heart rate rises even slightly and you're present in that moment, her mind begins to associate that sensation, music, with you. Not consciously, automatically. And here's the part most men misunderstand. You're not manipulating emotion, you're allowing it to exist, which means she finally sees you outside the box she placed you in. The friend box, the safe but flat box, the nice but invisible box. Emotion dissolves boxes, and once perception loosens, attraction has room to form. But here's the twist. This only works if you don't overclaim the moment. Which brings us to something most men sabotage without realizing it. Section 6. Social presence is louder than charm. Watch how a man moves when he thinks he's being evaluated. He narrows his focus. He becomes careful, performative, and women notice that contraction immediately. Men who carry quiet power don't isolate their confidence to her. They move through the environment the same way they move toward her, calm, respectful, unforced. How you treat wait staff, how you respond to interruptions, how you handle minor friction. These moments aren't background noise, they're data. She's watching how you manage the world when nothing is at stake. And if you're grounded there, she subconsciously trusts you to be grounded when things matter. This is why real confidence feels safe. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't sharpen its edges to impress. It stays consistent. Men who understand this don't try to dominate the room. They belong in it. And belonging is far more attractive than bravado. Now, here's where the dynamic often breaks. The bill arrives, and suddenly men either perform generosity or hesitate in a way that leaks uncertainty. Both collapse tension. Section 7. Power is quiet, not announced. When the check comes, most men turn it into a moment. They signal, they explain, they posture. That's not confidence, that's seeking acknowledgement. Men who carry quiet power act without narrating. They handle it when she's not watching, not as a trick, as a reflection of how they move through responsibility, no commentary, no display. Music. And when she returns and realizes it's already done, something subtle happens. Not gratitude, respect. Because initiative without validation signals self-rust, and self-rust is contagious. She feels safer around you because you don't need reassurance for your actions. But here's the part most men rush. They mistake momentum for entitlement, which brings us to the most misunderstood moment of the night. Section 8. Restraint creates gravity. At the end of the date, men feel pressure to seal it, to confirm progress, to prove something happened. So they lean in too fast. They turn curiosity into obligation. Men who understand attraction don't rush physical closure. They allow anticipation to breathe. A warm hug, a steady look, a calm, "I enjoyed tonight." And then space. Why does this work? Because desire grows in the gap between presence and absence. When you don't overtake the moment, her mind continues it for you. Questions form. Why didn't he push? Why do I feel calm instead of pressured? Why am I replaying this? Men who end nights with restraint don't disappear, they linger. And in the next part, we're going to turn inward to the shift that separates men who chase attraction from men who naturally command it. Because everything so far only works if your identity supports it. And that's where most transformations actually begin. Here's where everything either integrates or falls apart, because technique without identity eventually collapses. You can hold eye contact, choose the right setting, music end, the night with restraint. But if your internal frame is still seeking, she will, music, feel it. No matter how controlled you appear. This is the part most men avoid, not because it's hard, but because it removes excuses. Section 9. The Stoic Shift. Most men never make. There's a moment, quiet, internal, when a man realizes something uncomfortable. He's been measuring himself through her response, her interest, her warmth, her attention, and without noticing, he handed her authority over his state. Stoicism isn't emotional coldness. It's emotional ownership. Men who practice it don't suppress feeling. Music. They refuse to outsource stability. They understand one foundational truth. Attraction doesn't respond to need. It responds to self-containment. When a woman senses that your emotional center doesn't move when she pulls back, something inside her recalibrates. Not because she wants power, but because she respects it. Men who don't spiral from indifference feel unfamiliar. Men who don't chase reassurance feel grounded. Men who don't rush outcomes feel deliberate. And music deliberateness reads as value. This is where perception flips. Not because you improved your chances, but because you stopped negotiating your worth. Stoic self-improvement isn't flashy. It's quiet rituals, daily physical exertion that reminds you you're alive in your body, mental discipline that limits rumination, reduced exposure to comparison and noise. Not to become superior, to become centered. And centered men don't argue with reality, they observe it. Which brings us to something far more magnetic than effort. Section 10. Psychological tension is created by presence, not words. Most men think tension comes from flirting. It doesn't. It comes from containment. Music. The ability to be present without filling space, interested without leaning, warm without chasing. This is rare. Men who don't understand this talk too much, explain too much, reveal too quickly. They mistake transparency for connection, but connection isn't built through disclosure alone. It's built through attuned silence. Men who create psychological tension listen deeply. They pause before responding. They speak only when there's something to place into the space. This does something subtle. It shifts the dynamic. She begins to lean forward, ask questions, fill gaps. Not because you withdrew, but because you didn't overextend. And when she invests mentally before you do emotionally, something reverses. She's no longer evaluating you. She's orienting around you. This is the moment many men misunderstand and ruin. They sense the shift and try to accelerate it. But tension collapses under force, which leads us to the discipline that separates men who are felt from men who are merely heard. Section 11. Speak less, mean more. Words don't carry weight because of volume. They carry weight because of intentionality. Men who speak slowly aren't unsure. They're selective. They don't rush to impress. They don't narrate their value. They let pauses do part of the work. When you speak from a place of internal alignment about what matters to you, what shapes you, what you move toward, you stop sounding like a resume. You start sounding like a man with direction, and direction is magnetic. Because direction implies movement, and movement implies future. But here's the deeper layer most men miss. Attraction doesn't stabilize unless safety is reinforced. Not through reassurance, through consistency. Section 12. Safety is the gateway, not the reward. If she wasn't interested at first, it's often because her nervous system stayed guarded, not because you lacked appeal, but because she didn't feel oriented. Men who push attraction too early reinforce caution. Men who demonstrate emotional safety dissolve it. This shows up in micro behaviors: listening without interrupting, responding without defensiveness, holding boundaries without aggression. Safety doesn't feel boring when it's paired with polarity. It feels grounding, and grounding allows desire to land. When a woman feels emotionally safe, she doesn't need to stay alert. And when she's no longer alert, she can finally feel. This is where many men confuse patience for passivity. They are not the same. Patience is power held in reserve, and reserve creates depth, which leads to the truth that reframes everything you've learned so far. Section 13. Attraction is energy, not effort. Let this settle. You don't attract through doing more. You attract through being clearer. Clear in your values, clear in your presence, music clear in your boundaries. Men who radiate calm purpose don't try to be chosen. They let curiosity come to them. And curiosity is the beginning of pursuit. When you stop chasing outcomes, you create polarity. And polarity is what shifts dynamics from neutral to charged. In the final part, we'll close this loop not with techniques, but with identity. Because once this internal shift locks in, you don't return to who you were before. You move differently, speak differently, and are perceived differently. At this point, something subtle has already shifted. Music, not in her, in you. And that's the part most men never recognize until it's already happened. Because attraction doesn't change when she texts differently. It changes when you stop waiting for that text to decide how you feel. This is where the transformation completes. Section 14. The moment you stop needing the outcome. Here's the truth. Most dating advice avoids. The moment you need her desire, you hand her control over your emotional state. Not intentionally, not consciously, but your nervous system does it for you. Men who carry quiet power don't reject women emotionally. They simply don't organize themselves around being chosen. They enjoy connection. They welcome attraction, but they don't collapse when interest fluctuates. And women feel this immediately, music, because most men react. They react to delayed replies. They react to mixed signals. They react to uncertainty. Men who notice patterns instead of reacting stand apart. They don't ask, "What does this mean?" They observe interesting music. That single shift from interpretation to observation is the difference between anxiety and control. This is where attraction either locks in or dissolves permanently. Section 15. Why mystery isn't created, it's preserved. Many men think mystery is about withholding information. It's not. Mystery is the natural result of self-containment. When you don't overshare, when you don't explain yourself unnecessarily, music, when you don't rush to clarify every silence, you allow space for curiosity. And curiosity is not confusion. Music, curiosity, is engagement without certainty. That's where desire lives. This is why ending a night without a kiss can be more powerful than taking one. Not because restraint is strategic, but because it communicates something deeper. I don't need to take from this moment to feel complete. That energy is rare, and rarity pulls attention. She begins to wonder, not why didn't he want me, but why didn't he need to? That question changes everything. Section 16. The truth she'll never say out loud. Here's what most women won't verbalize, but always feel. A man's value isn't in how much he wants her. It's in how he makes her feel about herself when she's with him. Does she feel seen without being scanned? Does she feel calm without being managed? Does she feel understood without being analyzed? This doesn't come from charm. It comes from presence. Men who are emotionally centered don't consume space. They hold it. And when a woman steps into that space, she relaxes. Music. When she relaxes, walls lower. And when walls lower, attraction music finally has permission to surface. This is why some women suddenly change their mind. Nothing sudden happened. Safety arrived first, then curiosity, then desire. Section 17. The identity you leave with attraction was never about convincing her. It was about becoming someone who doesn't need to. Men who stay silent when others explain. Men who observe before reacting. Men who move with calm intention instead of urgency. These men aren't louder, they're clearer. And clarity changes how the world responds to you, including women who once didn't notice you at all. Not because you chased harder, but because you stopped chasing entirely. Music. And here's the final truth: quiet but unshakable. You don't need every woman to desire you. You don't even need her to desire you. You only need to become so internally aligned, so emotionally settled, so grounded in your own direction that when she finally does notice, it's not because you demanded attention, it's because your presence made you impossible to ignore. Once you understand this, you don't approach attraction the same way again. You move slower, you speak less, you feel more, and the world adjusts around you.